Hi, everybody. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started at exactly 7:30. So you have a few minutes to kind of settle in, and then we'll take it away. Okay, we are going to get started. Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for All Illinois Students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling. Thank you all so much for joining us. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time during the presentation. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, although we are kind of getting to the end of our session extravaganza. So be sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week on that same website, IACAC.org. And now I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Just give me 1 second. Let me get up my presentation. Okay, there we go. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name's Jonathan. I am the on-campus in Illinois territory manager at the School of the Art Institute. I work in the admissions office, and I'm joined by my kind of lead, if you will, my associate. So I'll let Rachel go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi there, my name is Rachel Dorsey. I am the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, meaning that I oversee all domestic first-time freshman recruitment counselors like Jonathan. And I'm excited to be here today and get some information, quality information underway for you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, today's presentation is going to be a kind of overview of what does it look like to start looking at college? What are you looking for? What are some things to keep in mind in terms of kind of taking a really large list of schools and narrowing it down to the right kind of perfect choices for you? Because that's a big kind of challenge. We know this, and we want to talk pretty extensively about that today. So let me go ahead and just jump right into that. So again, School of the Art Institute of Chicago, hello. Thank you all for joining us. And then again, if you're joining us here today, you're kind of already starting to think about some really big questions, right? You're thinking about, where do you want to go for college? What do you want to do for your future? What's a potential career in terms of the creative studies that you might be wanting to pursue? But ultimately, that's a lot to kind of ask of yourself, and it's a lot to narrow down from there. So hopefully through the presentation today, we're able to kind of give you a sense of, these are some quality things to think about. These are some quality things to keep an eye out for, so that you can kind of take this huge huge number, if you will. There's actually 8,000 not art schools, there's 8,000 colleges in the US alone. So kind of taking that large number and narrowing it down to just a few is it's a big challenge. So hopefully today we can help kind of facilitate some of that so that you don't have to worry about taking on that number by yourself. And one thing to keep in mind is that if you're coming here, you're probably interested in the creative fields, right? And that's a big thing. And one thing to keep in mind is that there's probably a lot of speculation based on whether you can find a job long-term within the kind of creative studies as a whole. Probably your parents have maybe been like, are you sure you want to do this? Or your friends are like, I know someone who did this and they're like still unemployed at 28 years old. And those are all stigmas, right? Those are all kind of speculations based on how people within the creative studies can kind of enter into the workforce, enter into their career path and do what they're passionate about. And you are able to do that, definitely. And there are multiple studies that kind of outline this. There's one that I kind of wanted to touch on today that was conducted by Arizona State University in collaboration with support from Columbia University, where they profiled 100,000 recent graduates from schools all across the nation, right? Where they followed them entering into their career path, watching them and seeing how they kind of navigated and profiling basically where they're at in terms of a lot of different factors. And ultimately, the profiling of these individuals were people who were working within law, people who were working within medicine, people who were working within a lot of different fields. That also included people who were working within the arts. And what they realized through this study is that art graduates are among the happiest professionals in the United States. And that's huge, right? Being happy within what you do is the main focus of, kind of entering into school. You want to make sure that you do something that you're passionate about. And there are definitely ways that you can go forward with that professionally. We'll talk about that extensively today. And I know that there's probably a few people out there that's like, happiness doesn't necessarily align to a job. That's true, right? That's true. But again, we are very aware of that at SAIC, and we have a lot of amazing opportunities and departments that kind of focus on the overall success of our students so that you understand how you can go into this creative industry with an idea of long-term success. That's really important. But to get kind of into the nitty-gritty of this, right? Like, what are the skills? What are the things that people are looking for in terms of employment? Because this is ultimately what it's all about. Well, recently, creativity and innovation are among the top 5 skills that employers indicate will increase in value within the next 5 years. So this is something that employers are aware of. The creatives within the kind of larger understanding of this field are definitely people that employers are looking out for. Why that is because they have the kind of critical skills that allow you to work within a lot of different sets, a lot of different skill sets. You have a creative approach to problem solving, and that's really valued in the workplace at the end of the day. So know that in terms of that outcome, which I know I kind of spoke on a little bit earlier, we really do value that at SAIC, and we ultimately kind of put that forward in terms of putting that as a success. But then another thing to kind of keep in mind, because we are kind of talking about the overall kind of narrowing down of lists, right? That's the ultimate goal. A lot of choices, a lot of things to keep in mind. And maybe one of the easiest things to kind of start with in terms of how you can narrow down this really massive number, like I said earlier, 8,000, is maybe starting in terms of where do you want to be? Where's the location? What's the size? So it's not a question of, just where in the US, but where in the globe. Where do you want to go and where do you want to take advantage of and kind of start building those professional connections that are ultimately going to help you in the long run. So are you a person who's maybe really interested in something like a big school, a really big, large school that has a lot of resources, but maybe you're not as much of an individual there because there's a large student population, or going to a smaller school where you have that kind of more intimate setting, you're more amongst kind of your classmates and whatnot, but the resources maybe are lacking. Here at SAIC, we kind of think that we're a marriage between the two, where we're quite small for a college, but we're actually one of the largest art and design schools in the nation. And we definitely have access to a lot of really incredible facilities for our students. To kind of name one, you're looking at a huge, huge resource for our students. which is the Art Institute of Chicago, which is the third largest encyclopedic museum in the world. It's just behind the Louvre and the Met in New York. We're number 3. And actually one of our main buildings, our 280 building, is attached to the museum. So you'll be walking in and out of that space all the time. So we're definitely a small school that has that kind of big feel to it. And you can definitely tell that we are an urban campus. We are definitely in the heart of downtown Chicago, but that's also something to keep in mind. Are you someone who really does thrive with that kind of excitement of being in the urban, or if you're more someone who kind of enjoys the more secluded, reserved kind of areas, if you will? So that's one thing to maybe start thinking about, to kind of look at these different schools, narrow down that list. I think this is maybe the best way to start. And then what type of school? There's a lot of different types of schools out there. We can start with kind of speaking about the 4-year college. And I kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier, but what does that have to offer for someone who's interested in the creative studies? What does it kind of give for you? Well, it has great resources. Normally it has great kind of archival things that are available to students, right? Because it's a very large school. But another thing to keep in mind is that you're probably going to be swayed way more to taking things like more academically driven liberal art classes, because that's kind of what they focus within. So you tend to be a little bit more based in that, where you're taking less studio classes as a result. But you also have the ability to kind of meet new people, meet people within different disciplines, but that also can be a compromise in some ways too. I was someone who went to a small 4-year college, and I was the only art major for the 4 years that I attended. Now, that might sound really horrible for some people. For me, it was just kind of something I understood and kind of accepted in some ways. But again, that is something to keep in mind. Now, if you're looking at a 2-year college, right, a kind of community college, maybe you're someone who kind of needs that study to get going, it's a great option. That is 100% too. It's very cost effective. It's very accessible in a lot of ways to students. But again, you're not necessarily going to be able to blossom into a full-on kind of area of study long term. It's kind of getting you a taste of what it's like. Maybe you go there in terms of bettering your GPA so that you're able to go to another school in the future. And then you have stuff that are more specialized, schools that are a little bit more specialized, right? Something like an art and design school, like we are. Which again, if you're someone who is a creative, this is going to be the perfect environment for you, because you're fully immersed in a community that are thinkers, they're makers, they have the same kind of interests and mindsets that you would have, and you're in this really immersive context, and that's really rewarding. And you take the majority of your classes in the studio. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you're kind of focused much more within the studio going to something like an art and design school. You take a few liberal art classes, but again, you're really getting that art education that you are kind of desiring right now. So again, what type of school? Are you someone who really wants that kind of big environment, large kind of state school? Are you someone who likes the liberal arts? Maybe you want to go to a small private liberal arts school, those 4-year institutions, if you will. Maybe you're someone who just wants to get a taste of what college is like, see and test the waters. A 2-year school would be a great option for that. It's also extremely cost effective. But if you're someone who wants that really immersive experience, you're ready to jump in and be surrounded by people who are just like you, those specialized schools such as an art and design school is a great option. And then another thing to kind of keep in mind is the curriculum and the facilities. This is a huge thing, because this is basically speaking to what is the study going to be like? How are you going to kind of navigate the education as a whole? What do they have to offer for you? So in terms of that, the main difference between those schools, like I was saying earlier, is going to be the ratio that you take. How many studio classes are you taking in terms of that curriculum? How many liberal art classes are you taking in terms of that curriculum? So something like a 4-year school is going to be swayed much more towards those academic courses. You'll be taking the sciences, the humanities, maybe some maths even, where you're taking the majority of it in that section, right? You're taking about 2/3 of your classes in that section. You take about 1/3 in your art, in your studio classes. So that would be kind of the curriculum breakdown in that sense. Whereas a 2-year school, that ratio, or excuse me, art and design school, that ratio is really flipped, right? So you're taking the majority of your classes in the studio arts, and you're taking just a few within the liberal arts. So it's kind of flipped in terms of what it has to offer. And then what's the size, right? That's another huge thing, because just because something like a huge 4-year institution, a more liberal arts 4-year institution is very large in size, it doesn't necessarily mean that the art department is really large. They might only have 4 or 5 faculty. Whereas at SAIC, we have 70 faculty in painting and drawing alone. So we have that kind of ability for a student to make a really big network, have the mentorship, and have the kind of reliance that is really important in terms of developing as an artist. And then it's also good to speak about curriculum as well. Ultimately, what are you going to be taking? How are you going to navigate that in terms of breaking it down? And what is the difference between a degree path and a major? So the idea of a major is that you're kind of going down the one pathway where you're kind of checking off the boxes as you go, but it kind of is a hallway in some senses. You just go forward, but you can't necessarily take a step back or kind of redirect or question where you are, because you might be somehow penalized in the long run. At SAIC, we know that creatives like that more kind of space to move, that ability to really try something. So the way that our education's kind of set up, if you will, is that we have these overarching degree paths that allow students that more kind of interdisciplinary context of going and trying a lot of different things, learning in a lot of different departments, and creating the education that they want, opposed to kind of checking the boxes off as they go. So what is the rigidity? What is the flexibility of that program? Is it going to be really kind of straightforward, or are you going to be able to try something, move around, and explore the different options that are available to you? And then what are the resources? What are the tools? What's available? At SAIC, we have a lot of different resources available to our students. We have 3 media centers, 2 wood shops, one of the two, as well as some incredible kind of resources in and of themselves, such as our Fashion Resource Center, which is essentially a huge closet of designer clothes that students can go into, touch, feel, and explore. We have a textile resource center. We have the video data bank library, a lot of different things, as well as state-of-the-art equipment that you're able to use and kind of enter into the workforce long-term and understand how to navigate those things, because what we have at the school are industry standards. So what are the resources? What are available to you? That's all really important to think about at the end of the day. How much can you take out of that education, and how much do they provide to you? And then another really important thing is to talk about the quality of that education. And there's a lot of different ways to think about determining the quality. One way is through something called accreditation, and it's a very kind of complex system, if you will. So I'll try my best to explain it. And maybe it will definitely kind of give you a sense of like, okay, I get that. But what essentially accreditation is looking at is the quality of the credits that you earn. How does your credits kind of affect entering into a graduate program? How are employers going to look at those credits that you earned at the school? What, again, is the quality of that? And there's a lot of different ways of doing it. And there's a lot of different organizations out there that kind of help to set that up. So to start with, what is regional accreditation? Well, there's a lot of governing bodies within the US Department of Education that do this very kind of exhausting work, looking at different types of outcomes in terms of the students, as well as what are available for the students while they're attending the schools. And it's asking the kind of question of what is the kind of overall quality that's available to the students. And it's a very long list. It's a very long kind of exhausting list. That's essentially what now our regional accreditation is. And when that school has that kind of golden seal of approval called accreditation, you can trust that you're going to be getting good quality education, and that the credits that you are earning are valid, and they will be definitely beneficial in the long run. We're proudly fully regionally accredited. We are accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, which is also accrediting some of our peers, if you will, something like University of Chicago, Northwestern University, and as well as some other schools within our region. So we're definitely really proud about that. But another thing to really keep in mind, in addition to just the regional accreditation, what is national accreditation? Which is kind of a little bit more specialized, if you will. And this is for specific schools who are much more specialized as a whole. So being an art and design school, our national accreditation is really important. And we do have a few of them. And I will go ahead and kind of introduce what those are. So to start with, we have our National Association of Schools of Art and Design. That is kind of a really big one, right? That's kind of our first national accreditation as a school. There are a lot of other schools that have that as well, but it's a really big kind of seal, if you will, that kind of shows that this school is quality. It focuses within the arts, right? Because it's kind of set up for that. And it's a really important thing. So your homework definitely is to kind of go out there and ensure that that is there, that the schools that you're looking for are, for one, regionally accredited. And then if it's an art and design school, you want to see if it has that NASAD accreditation for sure. And then on top of that, if you will, we have a few other kind of accreditations. We have the ACAD, right, which is going to be, let me make sure I get this correct, the Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design, which is another huge thing, right? This is something that, again, we have a lot of other schools within that relationship, and that accredited body is something that, again, kind of proves that the education that you're going to get here is really valid. And then on top of that, we have the NPD, which is another accrediting body, and it's the National Portfolio Day, which we'll talk about a little bit more in extent later on, but those are just some of them that we do have at SAIC that kind of covers as a whole.
Hey, Jonathan, can I jump in real quick just with a clarification?
Yes, go ahead.
So just in terms of talking about strict accreditation, NASAD is our only national accreditation. Those other, so ACAD and NPD, the NPD Association, those are really special memberships that we have that are tantamount to, it's similar considerations you definitely want to think about as a student. So you can trust all of those lists, as Jonathan said. But I thought on a technical note, it might be good to know just a little bit about that difference. Thank you.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, all that really important to keep in mind, everyone. And then to jump right ahead, it's also good to do kind of research on the ground, right? What do you have really accessibly available to you? And there's a lot of different channels right on the internet, if you will, that you can get information about a school and see what's available for you. So the best way to kind of do that, do a Google search of the schools that you're interested in, look at their website, look at what's officially available on their website. Maybe their social media maybe profiles some current students or gives a sense of what the classroom is like. We're probably not the most up to date in terms of that, but we're catching up. We're about 4 years behind, but we're getting there. So definitely check out our social media. There's a lot of other social medias out there for specific schools based on student life and things like that. So you can kind of get a sense of what the student body is like by kind of navigating their social medias. Another thing, if you want, there's definitely things like catalogs and view books that kind of give you this really beautiful, very high quality printout that you can flip through, and it gives you kind of the overall sense of what is the atmosphere of the school like. I also think that's a really great place to kind of look aesthetically, as we're all creatives, right? And kind of see how the school puts together their material. I always like that when you hold it and it has that really great texture to it, you know that it's going to be a good thing. But we also have things like virtual portfolio days, which happen all over. We have the National Portfolio Days, which I kind of spoke about earlier, which are events that happen basically weekly. They kind of structure within a certain region, right? So last week, just to give an example, we did have the Chicago and Milwaukee NPD, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you missed out. I know that we're speaking to our students who are in Illinois right now. If you're interested in attending one, all you need to do is go to the nationalportfolioday.org, and you can register and come and visit us at any time when we have the events happening. We also have additional virtual events, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, because we have a lot of different things, at least at SAIC, that we do offer to our students, as well as virtual campus tours. We have campus tours that happen Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They're awesome. They give you a sense of what the school is like, and ours are led by our really incredible student ambassadors. So definitely check them out. They're pretty fun. They're casual. We chat, things like that. But yeah, see what's available. Do a quick Google search, see what the school has to offer, especially now within that kind of virtual space that we're all in. There's a lot of really easy things that you can definitely chime in on and see what it's like. And then I also think we kind of spoke about this a little bit, but kind of do the research in terms of what What kind of support does a student have available? Are there different types of clubs? Are there different types of events? What's the programming happening right now? I think that's all really important things to keep in mind, because ultimately the way that kind of events, if you will, or clubs work is that those are all networks of support that students can have available for them with other students in mind. So it's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to kind of assimilate into a community, build that community at the end of the day. And there's a lot of different types of clubs out there, right? I can speak for what we have. We currently have, I think, over 60 registered student clubs at SAIC that range between infinity groups to more identity-based or politics-engaged groups to things that are more fun, like a horror movie club or something like that. So it's really good to kind of get a sense of that. And again, the virtual space is really awesome. You can get a sense of what's available out there right now, because if there's a lot of things available virtually, you know that there's going to be a lot of things available in person. And there's great ways to kind of participate in that. So I definitely encourage you all to check out what's available as prospective students, but also available for current students as well. And then in terms of, what are some even better opportunities? Exhibitions, right? Like what is available for students in that sense? We're creatives and we like to show our work. We like to see other work. While at SAIC, we have quite a few different types of galleries on our campus. We have our SAIC gallery, which is a student-run gallery. We have 2 different locations on campus that are completely student-run. They show student works. They highlight the different types of processes or interests of our students. So it's a really great thing if you're interested in something like curate, check out. But if you want to show your work or maybe have something like a group show, it's also a really great opportunity at the end of the day to do that as well. And there's some really exciting shows, and I believe the archive, at least in terms of site shows, are on their website. So if you just type in site like SAIC, you should be able to see the other shows that have happened. But we also have huge, really impressive galleries. You're seeing an image that's actually a little bit old. This used to be our Sullivan Galleries, but we recently moved onto Washington Street to have a more kind of public facing, kind of larger entity so that it's a little bit more accessible to the public, because Sullivan Galleries, while it was beautiful and quite large, was a little bit hard to find. So we did move, and so we have this really beautiful public space that is currently open. You can go and see exhibitions. I think it has a little bit of limited cap, so you would have to go there and kind of maybe wait potentially, but you were able to see that art. And I think kind of going out and looking at the different work that's being done by students is another great way at understanding what the education quality is going to be like. Because if you're excited by the work the students are making, you're going to be in that same environment and you'll be learning from those students as well. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. And then also going back to what I was talking about way earlier in the presentation, which is what is the outcome? How do you actually enter into the workforce in a creative field? What do you have available to you? And I kind of talked about our Capex department, which is our Career and Professional Experience department, which is incredible. They will start working with students very early on to kind of speak through a game plan. What are your interests? What do you want to do ultimately? How do you kind of craft an education to pursue that? They're always there as a resource, and they want to meet with our students. They want to chat about their interests and help them kind of profile what great jobs are available to them. And in terms of that, the wall that you see in the background kind of profiles a few jobs, right, that some of our really amazing alumni have been able to achieve while kind of finishing their studies at SAIC. So I'm not going to ask you to get up super close to kind of look at that list, right, and see just some of the names or kind of titles, if you will, that our alumni have been able to pursue. But to name a few, if you will, we have ones that go from graphics and designers, right? That's a little bit of an understandable one. Artists in residence, but also digital analysts, right? Like what is exactly going on in terms of technology? We have a really robust art and technology department at SAIC. So really take that in, look at it. You can see a lot of different things. And every time I look at that list, I'm always really inspired by what I see. But ultimately, how does that kind of groundwork start happening? Because we're looking at something that's at the end of it all, right? Like we're looking at job titles that people are actually getting when they're done with school. But what can they take advantage of while they're in school? Well, the Capex internship program is quite remarkable. It's really quite impressive. It is an internship program that actually fulfills roughly about 700 internships every single year, which is super impressive given our size. And we have internship relationships with you, if you will, with a ton of different companies. To name a few, the ones that you're seeing on your screen are ones that look to us in terms of their internships fulfilled by our students, because they know that our students are hardworking, they're creative, and they're problem solvers. And all of that stuff is really important, and we value that in terms of how we go forward with our education. So if you're someone who's looking at this list and you're like, oh my God, I might be able to get an internship at DreamWorks, I'm really interested in animation, you 100% can. If you're someone who's like a fashion kid and you're like, Prada, Donna Karan, that would be insane. Well, you can also take advantage of that if you come to SAIC. Or maybe if you're someone who's interested in curation, I mean, probably one of the biggest names in terms of museums, right, is right in our backyard. It's the Art Institute of Chicago. It's also on this list, as well as MoMA and the Museum of Science and Industry. So you can take advantage of that. And that groundwork is really important. And we know it's really important. So doing something like an internship is really something that can help you navigate that long-term goal, test the waters in terms of, is this the right fit for you? And we'll help you kind of prepare through mock interviews, the reviewing of your CV, making those connections, facilitating those connections alongside you, and fulfilling what you want to do long-term. And again, let's go back and kind of talk about what's available for you. What do you have to take into account in terms of looking into what is some feedback? How can you kind of get in the door and talk with someone about applying to the school, all that kind of jazz? Well, you can always keep in mind that we do have those virtual national portfolio days that I did talk about earlier, which are always there. They happen weekly, or yes, weekly on the weekends. Sometimes they're on Saturday, sometimes they're on Sunday. Check them out. There are different ones within different regions, but you can sign up for whichever one you want, and you can definitely come and join us. They're really incredible. They're really enjoyable, and they've been really successful thus far. So definitely come and check it out. We also have different types of SAIC-based virtual events. I did speak about this a little bit earlier, something like our virtual tour, but we also have AMAs, an Ask Me Anything hour, which is kind of meant to connect with current students at SAIC, ask them questions, ask admissions representatives questions, anything you really want. You also should maybe get feedback from your art teacher, right? Ask them in terms of what can you maybe do to prepare? Could you look at their portfolio? Things like that. You also can have a virtual one-on-one with us in admissions right now. All you have to do is contact us, and we are more than happy to chat with you, look at your work, have an information session, and just talk about what your different options are, because we're here to help, we're a resource, and you should always feel like you can reach out to us. And you can reach us at that email address that's on your screen, right? admis@SAIC, and you can schedule anything that you want. And another thing that I wanted to profile is our Portfolio Tip Tuesday, which is an event that happens every single Tuesday this fall. You can see that we have a few coming up. We have one next week that's going to be about portfolio documentation. And we have another one that's going to be how to apply and submit your portfolio so that portfolio is mostly ready to go. All that kind of stuff. These are really incredible. Rachel has been doing a lot of them, so I'm sure Rachel could speak and eons about it for sure, but they're really impressive. They're really exciting in a lot of ways because you have this space to just ask questions. It's very open, and you can ask people like us. They go for quite long. Is that correct?
Yes, so these have been wildly successful. We've been doing them every Tuesday, like Jonathan said, 5 p.m. Central Time. And it will start at 5 p.m. and we have maybe 15 to 20 minutes of prepared material. So if you only have a little bit of time to spend with us, that's not a problem. But we will stay to answer questions until there are no more questions in the queue. So it's been on average 1.5 hours to 2 hours that we'll stay and answer those questions. And the link for that, I'm sorry, it's not on the screen, is saic.edu/UG events, EVENTS. So again, saic.edu/UG events. And you can scroll down to online information sessions. And there are recordings of all of our previous sessions, which again have been super well received. We go all the way into portfolio development, how to make an artist statement from A to Z, and take a really deeper dive than we've ever been able to do before. So really exciting. I hope that some of you check it out, especially if you're interested in art school and aren't sure exactly where to start.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So definitely something to check out. It's a really incredible thing. And I'll be doing the next one. So maybe we'll see each other again. But then also let's get back into maybe the nitty gritty of terms of how do you apply? What are we looking for in the application? So we do use the Common App, which is pretty standard. We are test optional this year, so you don't have to worry about anything like SAT or ACT. That is something that our domestic students do not need to worry about. International, we will still be asking for something like an English proficiency exam score, TOEFL, Duolingo, but domestic students are good to go. That's really awesome. We'll be asking additionally though for high school transcripts, a letter of recommendation, one, right, that is coming from maybe art teacher or anyone who can speak really professionally on your behalf. I did skip over the artist statement. That was intentional because I wanted to talk about the portfolio first. The portfolio is the most important part of the application. What we ask for, our only requirements is going to be 10 to 15 images or 5 minutes of time-based work. Content-wise, that is fully up to you. So how we kind of encourage our students to think about the portfolio is that you want to select works that you're proud of, that you're enthusiastic by, and represent you as an individual with a unique point of view. That's really, really important to think about. So you want to pick those works that you genuinely want to show us. It's like a show and tell at the end of the day. Remember when you were little, you never wanted to have like a lame show and tell. You always wanted to have something that was of your kind of enthusiasm so that you could share it with your peers. That's the same as a portfolio. I want to be able to look at it and kind of feel the enthusiasm behind your work. So just pick those works that you're proud of. And going back to the artist statement is kind of the written informant to the portfolio. So this is where you're outlining largely, very broadly, the works that you selected in the portfolio. It doesn't have to get into the nitty gritty or anything. You're just basically telling us the broad interests that you have. What are you doing with your work? And maybe what do you want to do while you come to SAIC? Again, super broad, only about 250 to 500 words, which is about a page in length. But that's what our application kind of looks like. And it's also available on our website if you need to review it ever. So just keep that all in mind. And then another thing to keep in mind are dates. Dates are always really important, right? There's a lot of them on the screen. Some of them have passed, but there are still a few available. For Illinois students, the FAFSA is open, and you do want to apply to that as soon as you can, because Illinois students do have certain grants that are available to them that kind of decrease in value the longer you wait, something like the MAP grant. So you want to apply to FAFSA as an Illinois student as soon as you can, so you have the best eligibility in terms of funding. So definitely keep that in mind. In terms of dates to apply by, the most important one to keep in mind is going to be SAIC's priority merit scholarship deadline, which is November 15th, which is quickly approaching. That is very true. But why you want to keep this date in mind is because it's going to be the point where we have the largest funding availability for our students who are applying. How all deadlines work in terms of application at all schools is that it's kind of like an upside down triangle. So the largest amount of funding that's available is that first deadline, and it narrows from there on out. So I always like to kind of highlight that for sure. But some other important dates on here. Let's see, May Day, that's kind of the official college decision date. While that's kind of in the future, it's something to look out for, because that's a huge kind of point of celebrating, because that's when you've been able to kind of decide where you want to go, take that huge list that we were talking about earlier and narrow it down to just the right one, which is ultimately you're going to get there. So don't necessarily worry right now. I know it seems kind of scary, but you will get there in the long run. And that is our quick little presentation, everyone. So thank you for joining us. And let us know if you have any specific questions or anything like that. We're here to answer anything that's on your mind.
Absolutely. So we'll monitor the Q&A box. I know we have 2 participants right now, so feel free to gather your thoughts a little bit. While you do that, Jonathan, I'm wondering, did you have help when you were a high school student thinking about art school, or what was, did you have an art school 101 or anything like that in your life?
I did not have that. I ultimately had it wasn't unique, but a different kind of approach to getting to an art school. I was a student who actually had to go to a community college to start with, because I wasn't necessarily the best high school student, but I did definitely enjoy my time there. And then I got to the point where I was able to apply to a four-year school and enter into that, finish my bachelor's degree in art, which was a small liberal arts school actually. And then when I applied to my master's, I was able to actually go to an art and design school. And it was really rewarding when I eventually got to SAIC as a student, because it was a thing that I kind of always had in the back of my head, but I never necessarily had the stepping stones to get there at the end of the day. It took a long time to get there, but I eventually did. So having a presentation like this would have been really helpful early on, if you will, to know what the options are.
Well, it sounds like you had a good journey on the way, though, and I'm sure that makes your work even better.
Yes.
There is a question that came into the Q&A that I wanted to answer, which is, are there study abroad options? So, of course, right now, our study abroad program is not on, but we do normally have robust study abroad options, both for semester away and for study trips. So actually, Jonathan, did you go on any study trips when you were a student?
I did not. I really regretted it though.
Well, I'm extra sorry then, because I'm going to talk about my study abroad experience as an SAIC student, which was amazing. It was the one thing I'm really glad that I did. Whenever I make my student loan payments, I'm like, yes, it was worth it. Because I went to Umbria, Italy, in a medieval castle town on a beautiful hillside in Italy, where I had my own private 24-hour studio space that overlooked basically a Renaissance painting, landscape. It was so beautiful. And we had 3 square meals a day prepared for us by an Italian chef. It's like comical and so luxuriant and ridiculous to think about, but it was an incredible, really meaningful experience as a young artist, basically to do a residency over the summer in Italy. So yes, we do. We have many robust study abroad options. That is a great question. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So it looks like we don't have other questions yet, but if our 2 participants have other burning questions, please feel free to drop them in. Oh, yes. What is the student to teacher ratio? Lucy with the amazing questions. Our student to teacher ratio, last I checked, I believe it's 11:1. Does that sound right to you, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so 11:1. Small class sizes is a major feature of an education at SAIC. As artists, being in the studio, getting that one-to-one mentorship in those small class sizes and really developing relationships with the rest of the people in your cohort, super, super important. So yes, we have a really good ratio. The only class that would be bigger, significantly bigger than that, is our art history seminar classes. So you have to take art history, prehistory to 19th century, and modern to contemporary art and architecture, and those could have 50 to 100 students. Although during this COVID pandemic era, even those classes have been significantly capped. So our class sizes are even smaller for our modified in-person classes to keep all of our students safe. So I don't know how long that will continue, but in the meantime, it's probably the student to teacher ratio is even a little shrunk from where it normally is.
Very true.
Any other questions out there?
One thing that I was actually going to talk about, which is maybe a little bit related to study abroad trips, but it's a little bit closer to home, is, well, we actually got a question, so I'll hold off on that. What are some examples of club student organizations on campus? Well, I can speak to a few. I was never part of any. I'm not sure if you were, Rachel. So if you were part of any, definitely let me know.
I was, yeah. But if so maybe I'll give my subjective experience,
yes.
And then Jonathan, you can give more about your understanding. So I was a part of many mental health based groups at SAIC. So we have a support group on campus. We have Active Minds, which is about raising awareness about mental health and the stigma surrounding mental illnesses. There are other affinity-based groups that we partnered with a few times. So we still have Black at SAIC, which has had some amazing online programming that I've seen through their Instagram, which is very active. We also have gender and queer-based groups for students who want to have more of a discourse around that, and also safe spaces for them to explore and discuss their own unique identities. We have architecture groups. We have Xerox Candy Bar, which is like an experimental comic type thing. There are so many. It's a really vibrant community, and that would be my number one recommendation, even if you go to a school that is online, is to get as involved as you can with some sort of community-based, student-based organization, because that's where you're really going to find your people. And it's the easiest way. You have a shared mission, you have shared interests, you have a reason to be in contact repeatedly. So I think that that's always my number one advice. So anyway, Jonathan, if you have anything you want to add about student groups.
I think you did a great profiling of some of the amazing groups that we do have, but I was going to add that it's easy to start a group at SAIC. You only need 2 people actually to start a group. So it just needs to be like you and a friend with a kind of common goal, if you will, a common idea. You can propose that to student government and get student government funding and start your own club. So it's quite easy to start the thing if you don't see the thing that you're really interested in, which you probably will be able to find, but in case you don't, you can start it very simply.
Absolutely. And the funding is a good point, Jonathan. When I was a student, we had to learn how to submit a proposal and pitch a proposal to the student government, which was amazing experience. And we did so to fund a speaker who had borderline personality disorder to come and talk to the school and basically demystify what that is and how she's dealt with it, and humanize the experience for students. And we ended up getting over $1,000 from the school to put on this program. And it was really, really great.
Yeah. So definitely look into that, because I think the funding channels are something also to just generally keep in mind, because there's quite a few of them, and we can even take that and kind of go back to the study abroad trips. We have really incredible funding channels that can help offset the cost of what those trips would be. And kind of make them a little bit more tangible, if you will. So not only with the student government, the kind of student clubs, there are also kind of different funding channels available for you all the time, for sure.
Absolutely. I want to do a quick time check, just because I know we have to turn this back over to our StriveScan colleagues. So Jonathan, do you know when we have to be wrapped up by?
I think we're almost at time. It's 8:14.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, our emails are up there. So anybody watching live or who's watching this recording later, please reach out to us. We love to work with students, even though it has been a stressful, difficult, exhausting time for us all. The thing that I think continues to help us show up for work as our best selves is the students, teachers, and counselors that we work with. Any other closing thoughts, Jonathan?
I think also, yeah, just be in touch, reach out at any time. We're here to help. We're a resource at the end of the day, and we're here if you just want to have a quick conversation about applying to school, or if you want us to look over your work, we're always happy to do that. So you can reach out at any time, for sure. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great.
All righty. Thank you both so much. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. When you close the window, there will be a very quick link, or a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We hope that those of you who have joined us will take a minute to provide some feedback. And again, just remember that this is one of many sessions that IACAC is doing in conjunction with StriveScan. And you can find that information at iacac.org. And in a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording, as well as the other session recordings, also at iacac.org. So thank you so much, everybody. Be safe and be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.